Welcome to the depression episode of PB Ballers. I'm your host Albert. Today we're going to talk about the KFA's scandalous hearing at the South Korean National Assembly Sports Committee, where Chairman Chung Mong-gyu and his cronies were basically blasted in front of the entire world. Just for a little background information, guys, the KFA is run by HDC Group, which is like an offshoot of the company Hyundai, which makes a lot of cars. The KFA is funded by Chaebols, which is a conglomerate for an English translation. Basically, think of like a Jeff Bezos or an Elon Musk funding U.S. soccer. It's crazy, but unfortunately, that's the way it is in Korea because we're a very small country with limited resources. So we have to rely on the uber rich to fund our soccer football federation. Now, the reason for this hearing this past week was that politicians in Korea's National Assembly, which is basically our version of Congress, wanted to investigate the hiring of current KNT manager Myung-bo. Now, a little background information, right? Jurgen Klinsmann was hired as KNT manager after the 2022 World Cup. Obviously, he went on that disastrous run at the Asian Cup, gets fired, and then the KNT basically uses a few interim managers for a long time until they just finally decided to hire Myung-bo a few months ago. Okay, now this hiring has been put into question because there are so many shady and maybe unethical ways as to how it went down. For those who don't remember, our excellent friend Steve Hahn has reported on this saga. The KFA technical head Lee Im-seng basically went to Hong Myung-bo's house in Ulsan at like 11 at night and practically begged him to take the national team job. He did, I believe, conduct interviews with two foreign candidates, David Wagner and Gus Poyet in Europe. But from the evidence that's been coming out, those interviews were pretty much shams. It appears that these two foreign gentlemen did not have a real fair shot at getting this job. And all the evidence right now is saying that Hong Myung-bo was basically, this job was rigged for him from the start. There were apparently presentations prepared for members of the KFA where they went through the pros and cons of hiring either Hong Myung-bo, David Wagner, or Gus Poyet. For Gus Poyet and David Wagner, the presentation listed a lot of negatives, a lot of cons, while for the one for Hong Myung-bo listed a lot of positives, talked about how he would be able to galvanize the locker room, talked about his experience, basically made him to be like the next Pep Guardiola. And this, in essence, is the main problem with this hiring. People are saying that they didn't give a fair shot to these foreigners, and they basically gassed up Hong Myung-bo from the beginning because he was the only one that they wanted. And people are mad about that, as they should be, because it wasn't a fair process. And ultimately, I think the man very responsible for this is Lee Im-seng. He is, like I said, the technical head of the KFA, or he was. Apparently, Lee Im-seng went to Hong Myung-bo's house at 11, like I said, but they didn't even meet at his house. They went to a local bangchip, or a bakery, that's operated by Hong's friend down in Ulsan, and they just had some coffee and bread while talking about the manager job. Now, guys, I know in the real world, you get jobs because of recommendations. That's fine. But in this case, for such an important job, you cannot just give it to a friend and talk about it at a coffee shop. There has to be a proper process. This again shows the systematic rot in Korean football. My co-founder Jason has talked about this on the channel, but we talk about how even if we had won the Asian Cup, it wouldn't have mattered because there's a systematic issue in Korean football in that the head of the snake, Chung Mong-gyu, is a rotten, spoiled, overgrown man-child who doesn't know how to manage his way out of a paper bag. I also want to make clear, this hearing at the National Assembly will not lead to any significant changes. The National Assembly in Korea does not have the legislative authority to, fire Chung Mong-gyu or make him resign. All it can do is have these hearings and make quote-unquote suggestions. And I guess the longer-term consequence of this man running Korean football is the fact that we have an important World Cup coming in less than 2 years in America, okay? I've harped on this point before, but as a Korean American or, as a Korean Canadian, you can't bomb a World Cup, but you can't bomb, I think, the biggest World Cup in this century, in my opinion. The United States, for all its flaws, is still the biggest media market in the entire world. It's going to bring a lot of attention and money and there's going to be a lot of fans watching, especially a lot of Koreans who are part of the diaspora. You cannot mess up a World Cup like this, where you risk not just only losing a generation of fans, but a generation of players. And I will never forgive the KFA if they ruin this 2026 World Cup, which it looks like they might, honestly. Myung-bo in the hearing basically said, I'm not stepping down. He said, I don't know anything about the hiring process. They just told me to do it. And one thing about Myung-bo that I really don't like is the fact that he's also an egomaniac. During this hearing, he said, I didn't want the job, but I felt it was my duty, and I consider this a 봉사, or a volunteer post. You're getting paid 20억, which is around $1.7, $1.8 million, or around that number. It's not a volunteer job. It's a job where you're getting paid a lot of money and you got to do well. And what makes it even more infuriating is the fact that he overrates himself as a manager. You don't need to save us. You're not the answer to the problems of Korean football. You're not a Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp. Who do you think you are? He was actually the former Korean manager back at the 2014 World Cup. 2014 World Cup was an abject disaster for South Korea, most likely because of Myung-bo making terrible lineup decisions, playing players that were out of form, benching guys that were in good form, just making really dumb lineup decisions, making substitutions way late in the game. He's already had his shot as KNT manager, and it was horrific enough to the point where a lot of Korean fans just didn't want him to return. He has had a good run in the K-League with Ulsan Hyundai, winning multiple league titles, but again, the K-League is a different animal. Okay, Korean football is improving, but it's still not the best league in the world. It's not a good league, in my opinion. So you can't really look at his accomplishments there and go and be like, oh, well, he could be the guy to lead the Korean national team in 2026. No, that's not what I believe, and I believe he was the wrong choice. This hearing really exposed the darkness infecting Korean football. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. We're going to have more great content coming up. We're collaborating a lot more with Steve Hahn at FIFA. We got a really amazing interview with Hong Hyun-suk of Mainz coming up, so stay tuned for that. I got some more video from my trip from Germany. And just keep an eye on our channel as we ramp up to the 2026 World Cup. We'll be covering everything from Korean football, European ball. And if you guys want to hear more about North American ball too, leave a message in the comments or hit us up via email, whatever you want. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.